Gentlemen, this event is associated with the first development working group meeting under India's G20 presidency. Once ethos, drawing inspiration from the Sanskrit saying, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which translates to, the world is one family. This resonates strongly in India's G20 theme of one earth, one family, one future. India's Mission Life, Lifestyle for Environment, launched by the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, this October, aims at charting a pathway for people worldwide to strive towards achieving the 2030 agenda. The Development Working Group envisages an ambitious outcome on life in the coming months, and we are looking forward, ladies and gentlemen, to hear the perspectives of the erudite luminaries in our midst, the stellar array of global experts during the conversations today. We now have an audio-visual on Mission Life to give you more insight into this ambitious vision for global action. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention on this screen? Let's take a look at this audio-visual. So we're going to be playing a special audio visual for you, ladies and gentlemen, but we're just waiting for you to take your seats at the back. Thank you very much. Please be seated. We have a very special audio visual on Mission Life, which is lifestyle for environment. This is the session on infusing new life into green development. And this particular video will delve more and give you more perspective and insight into this ambitious vision for global action. Let's take a look at the audio visual now.
From everyone that the world is changing. Say, you sound wrong. That's how I know that the change is wrong for the better. But how did we get here? I also want the world to change, but I wanted to change for the better. In 2030, having been 21, millions like you will be stepping into an age of hope and optimism. Shouldn't the world grant our dreams, our potential? 2030 isn't that the year by when the world committed itself to reaching the Sustainable Development Goals? That's 2,000 days from now. Can we do something together? I think we can. I know we can. When I look around, I see we are already doing a few things right. Maybe only a few of us are doing it. Maybe we're only people different, but that's how life starts. Life, do you know what I heard first? Yes, life, L-I-F-E, life. It's a movement by every single person, for communities, for organizations, for policymakers, for governments. for nations. And how does this movement start? With just 5 steps. First step, it's always comes. Second step, biggest step, okay? So make a choice. Very strong. And ignore. We have more choices. Society will चीजें कॉमन विषय हैं जैसे वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग एंड सोलर पैनल देश की हिस्ट्री रिस्पांसिबिलिटी है पहले कस्टमर आपके ब्रांड के लिए प्राइस के लिए आप कस्टमर आपके हमारे पास फाइट का रेटिंग के लिए रेडी के लिए आजकल ज्यादातर दुनिया की कंपनीज ई बाइक यूज करती है अच्छा लगता है The first step, simple. Just switch on light. Just switch on. And the fifth step, spread the word to spread the movement. My country has renewed its commitment to the planet. More words and act. It's time for you to join us.
Ladies and gentlemen, India has given a global call to action with Mission Life, and I now take the privilege of inviting the Indian G20 Sherpa Shri Amitabh Kant, who is going to be in conversation with Dr. Arunabha Ghosh, the CEO of the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. Let's welcome them both on stage with a big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Shri Amitabh Kant and Dr. Arunabha Ghosh on stage. Namaskar and welcome, sir. I now request you, Dr. Ghosh, to please take over the proceedings.
Yes. Good afternoon and welcome back. Mr. Amitabh Kant, to tell us a little bit more about what Mission Life means for G20. Mr. Kant, the G20 is about creating consensus, bringing economies together, bridging divides to solve global crises. Where does sustainable lifestyle and Mission Life fit in driving a new deal for green development across the world?
So thanks. Let me first welcome all our guests here today. It's wonderful to have all of them from different parts of the world joining us for this session on life. And life is critical because, a country like India, for instance, we will be doing urbanization on a very rapid pace in the coming years. In the next 5 decades, you'll see 500 million Indians getting into the process of urbanization. That's like building 2 Americas. Every 3 years, you'll be doing a completely new Chicago, for instance. Now, you cannot follow the model of urbanization which the Western world has done. When America urbanized, gas, water, everything was freely available. And therefore, America had the luxury of creating sprawling cities. You could build cities for cars and not for people. So the American car companies actually bought over the railway companies and destroyed them so that cars could sell. The American model was to build urbanization across its highways. And the challenge now for a country like India and many developing countries of the world is to do a model which is totally different. And that is that you do compact, dense urbanization. And that would mean that you create cities for walking, for cycling, for renewable energy, for electric mobility, a totally different model of, so this would require a totally different kind of a growth model. This would require a different, you will have to actually train your urban planners for another pattern of urbanization, which Indian planners are not equipped to. They've all been trained in the American model of urbanization. You will have to bring in a lot of behavioral change. And when you talk about lifestyle for sustainability, it's actually a lot to do with nudging behavior. And nudging behavior is what Richard Thaler and Carl Sunstein talk about. That is, it's not countries which will make a difference. It's individual and community behavior which will make a difference. If countries were to make a difference, a lot of difference would have been made from the time of COP1 to COP27. So if you look back at looking at the history of COP1 to COP27, not one single commitment of the developed world has been true. And every year you'll find new commitments, as you've seen a new commitment on loss and damages in COP27, and all of them will be long-term commitments which will not be fulfilled. So if you want a transformation on much of this, what has been discussed will be relating to individual action and community behavioral change. And that will be really the key to future growth.
So you've talked about nudge, you've talked about individual behavior, but you also talked about the developing world, the emerging economies. So how does this individual behavior aggregate at a national, at an economy-wide level, whether it's renewables, whether it's green hydrogen? Could you reflect a little bit about how India is thinking about this movement at a national level?
So, if you look at the overall carbon space available to the world at 1.5 degrees centigrade, 2,400 gigatons, let's look at a country like India, specifically. We have not contributed to carbonizing the world. Our contribution is 1.5% per capita wise. You're entitled to about close to 18%. We've not contributed to it, but irrespective of that, we are going to industrialize, and therefore the challenge for India is to be the first country in the world to industrialize without carbonizing the world. Now, if you want to industrialize without carbonizing the world, renewable is one component, because electricity is just 20% of your energy. So even if you do 100% of your electricity, it'll be just 20% of your energy. The balance is 80% is all hard to abate sectors. It's refineries, it's fertilizer, it's steel, it's cement, it's long distance transport. And the challenge, as I see it, is that you need to decarbonize hard to abate sectors. And that would mean that you need to use renewable, to crack water, use electrolyzer to produce green hydrogen and decarbonize these sectors. Now, India, for instance, is climatically blessed. India doesn't have competition in that field from China. Your competition, if there is any, is from Middle East in terms of climatic condition. And you are already a consumer of gray hydrogen of about 11%. So if you are able to decarbonize your refineries, your steel, your cement, the potential for India to be the production center of the world, the export center of the world, the technology center of the world, the R&D center of the world, the electrolyzer manufacturing of the world is huge. And what it would lead to is then a completely new model of development. That is a model of development which is focused on renewable, which is focused on green hydrogen, and which is focused on electric mobility. And that, it's very important to say that life is not about being anti-consumerism. It's about a completely new model of development which involves a behavioral change towards completely new areas of growth, new urbanization, new transportation, new circular economy, a new method of actually moving forward to decarbonize your fossil growth sectors. The Prime Minister has already said in his Independence Day address that India should be independent from fossil fuel import by 2047, by the time it becomes 100. You're already doing about $200 billion worth of fossil fuel import. This is going to go up to about $350 billion in the next 15 years. Now, India will not have the capacity to do that unless and until it doesn't use its hugely blessed climatic condition to become a massive producer of green hydrogen.
You talked about India and other emerging countries being fast urbanizing economies. These are also countries that have very young populations.
Yeah.
What is this new model of development that the youth could both aspire to but also drive? Can we create a circular economy unicorn in India?
Well, you can, but circular economy is a it's a complex process. I mean, circular economy can be done if you do this process of R&D, where every input is actually an output into something else. Circular economy, you can't retrofit. You need to do a lot of innovation from the design stage itself. For every startup to say that I'm going to become a circular economy startup means that everything you produce is designed as an input into something else. And therefore, the backward-forward linkages into manufacturing process has to be very, very tightly thought through. A lot of research, a lot of development, a lot of innovation has to go in. And therefore, while India's emerged as a great startup nation in the world, a huge amount of work has to be done by young entrepreneurs. A lot of disruption has to be done in many of these fields in the circular economy. Trying to say that I want to be a circular economy nation by retrofitting is a very difficult job. It requires huge amount of R&D and innovation.
Last question, Mr. Khan. This side event, of course, is happening on the sidelines of what is going to be the first meeting of the Development Working Group. So what would be your message to other delegates from the G20 countries of how Mission Life can also drive a new agenda for the Development Working Group?
So one is that governments across the world, and their track record has been extremely poor. They will give long-term commitments they will never fulfill. If you want to transform the world in terms of a net zero world by 2050, individuals and communities will have to take a lot of responsibility. And that would mean that a completely new model of growth, a completely new model of development has to emerge from the emerging nations in terms of transportation, in terms of urbanization, in terms of plastics, in terms of circular economy. That is really the key, that the developing economies must become the nations to industrialize without carbonizing.
We will deliberate through the afternoon how exactly we can do that, so we can provide those inputs into your discussions with the G20 Development Working Group. Thank you, Mr. Kant, for kicking us off on sustainable lifestyle.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shrikant, for inspiring us and actually encouraging us to step up and become champions of Mission Life. Also, this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, sets the context for the discussions ahead. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh, for leading the conversation. Thank you once again. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we have a special message for India's G20 presidency. Also, the G20 delegates who will drive these important discussions over the coming months, and the people of India from Her Majesty Queen of Bhutan, Jetsin Pema Wangchuk. Let's take a look at that video message.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I bring warm greetings and best wishes from His Majesty the King and the people of Bhutan. Our congratulations to India on assuming the presidency of the G20. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, we are confident that India will discharge its important responsibilities of the presidency with great prudence and success. We extend our best wishes to Prime Minister Modi and the Government of India. It is a privilege to address this side event of the Development Working Group on infusing new life into green development. We commend and support the launch of Mission Life by Prime Minister Modi, which closely echoes Bhutan's long-standing commitment to sustainability and environmental preservation. Along with India, we are dedicated to addressing one of the most complex and significant challenges of our time, climate change. As scientists continue to reveal alarming rates of global warming in a world stretched thin for resources, Bhutan became the world's first carbon-negative country, with our forests absorbing about 3 times more carbon dioxide emissions than we emit. And we have pledged to remain a net carbon sink for all times to come. In framing an approach to holistic development and progress, the people of Bhutan have nurtured a deep-rooted reverence for our natural environment. Today, Bhutan's development philosophy centers around the principle of environmental protection and sustainable socio-economic development. But if changing realities bring new ambitions and goals, it must also bring new plans and preparations. Bhutan is committed to ensuring the survival and continued vibrance of our natural heritage. We are aware that this will require concerted efforts in order to balance cultural and environmental conservation with economic prosperity. 2 months ago, in October, Bhutan held the inaugural snowman race. The race was initiated by His Majesty the King to bring global attention to climate change and its devastating consequences. Known as the world's toughest climate action race, top runners from across the world journeyed over some of the last untouched landscapes of Bhutan's mountain ranges. People living in these remote communities have contributed the least to climate change, and yet are the most vulnerable to its consequences. Our glaciers, which are water reserves sustaining over 1 billion lives, are disappearing and are at constant risk of flooding. The snowman race ended with the climate conclave to consolidate our commitment and chart the way forward. Bhutan has also scaled up our conservation efforts with the launch of programs such as the Bhutan for Life flagship project that creates sustainable financing, the first of its kind in Asia, to permanently safeguard Bhutan's network of protected areas. The positive impacts of the project goes well beyond Bhutan, with the protection of endangered flora and fauna species, as well as the conservation of critical watersheds and forests. A huge step to finding solutions to global problems like climate change and averting future crises will be taken if we can think in the spirit of community and identify individual actions that can make a difference. We are aware that climate change is the most significant threat facing youth and children across the world. Save the Children estimates that by 2040, 1 in 4 children will be living in areas with extreme water shortages as a result of the climate crisis, while currently 160 million children are exposed to increasingly severe and prolonged droughts. We have a duty to ensure that our children inherit a livable planet. It is integral that we always remain mindful of how our decisions and actions today impact the well-being of future generations. So I understand this to be the intention of the LIFE campaign, and I take this opportunity to thank the Government of India and UNEP India office for amplifying this initiative globally. We stand with our neighbor and close friend India to urge for global action on this front. We have a colossal challenge on our hands, one that no country or company or individual can tackle alone. If each of us does our part, we can put humanity back into harmony with nature and leave for future generations a world of peace, prosperity, equality, and happiness. Thank you and tashdale.
Ladies and gentlemen, we thank Her Majesty, the Queen of Bhutan, Jetsun Pema Wangchuk, for her message of solidarity and cooperation as well as peace. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I take the privilege of once again inviting the Indian G20 Sherpa, Shri Amitabh Kant, on stage, this time for a group photographs with all our speakers. We invite Ms. Gauri Singh, Deputy Director General, IRENA, Dr. Atsushi Watabe, Program Director, Institute for Global Environment Strategies, Mr. Nitin Desai, Chair, the Energy and Resources Institute, and from our Under Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, UN, Dr. Navroz Dubash, Professor, Center for Policy Research, Ms. Tamanna Inamdar, Senior Editor, Times Network, Ms. Ligia Norona, UN Assistant Secretary General and Head of UNEP New York Office, Dr. Arunabha Ghosh. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite Mr. Stephen Sikars, Director, Division of Circular Economy and Environmental Protection, UNIDO, Mr. Sonam Wangchuk, Innovator and Education Reformist, Dr. Shannon B. Olson, Global Director, the Eco Network. We have Dr. Shannon B. Olson, Global Director from the Eco Network. I invite you all to please grace the stage for a group photograph. I may also invite the DWG co-chairs to join us on stage, please. May I invite Shri Naidu and Ms. Gambhir to please grace the stage, ladies and gentlemen. Can we have a big round of applause for the dignitaries gracing the dais? Thank you so much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to apprise you that the United Nations has been a champion of Mission Life, with Secretary General Mr. Antonio Guterres gracing the launch of LIFE. Today, we have a message from the UN Deputy Secretary General, Ms. Amina J. Mohammed, on this special occasion. We'll take a look at that audio visual, please.
Excellencies, my warm congratulations. Excellencies, I warmly congratulate India for assuming the presidency of the G20 and thank the Development Working Group meeting for convening today's event on infusing new life into green development. The Lifestyle for the Environment, or LIFE movement, is a welcomed reminder that both individuals and collectives have a role to play in tackling our shared challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, poverty, hunger, social unrest and inequalities, and the climate emergency are all on the rise. These crises are not only pushing us further away from the Sustainable Development Goals as we reach the halfway mark to 2030, but also undermining our collective ability to withstand future crises. As the UN Secretary General reiterated at the recently concluded COP27, we need all hands on deck. And we need India's leadership in this pivotal historic moment to keep the G20 together and fulfill its promise of delivering a more stable and equal world for all. The world needs an SDG stimulus plan to bring our Sustainable Development Goals back on track by mobilizing and accelerating long-term, low-interest, sustainable financing in support of a just transition for all. Driven by the leadership of India, we hope to see the G20 take concrete actions to implement such a plan. The UN will remain fully committed to pursuing this effort, including through the work of the UNDP as Secretariat of the Sustainable Finance Working Group. Under India's G20 presidency, which marks the first ever developing country troika ahead of Brazil and South Africa's presidencies, we look forward to greater engagement from the Development Working Group in upcoming meetings, including the SDG Summit and the high-level dialogue on financing planned for 2023. Excellencies, the time has come to infuse new life into green development. The United Nations stands ready to support India's G20 presidency to this end, and through this, see the G20's collective actions on sustainable development rise to new heights. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the time indeed has come to infuse new life into the Sustainable Development Goals. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my privilege to inform all of you that we have Shri Parmeshwaran Iyer, the CEO of BPIO, who's going to be joining us live from New Delhi. And he has a presentation on Mission Life. Also, he's going to talk about how India envisages rolling out this ambitious mission for millions of people across the world. Mr. Iyer, if you can hear us, ladies and gentlemen, let's connect with Shri Parmeshwaran Iyer.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you in Mumbai. I'm sorry I couldn't be there today due to another pressing engagement in Delhi, but very happy to talk to you about life. Already heard from Amitabh and Arunabha about sort of big picture on life. I'm going to give you share a presentation in which we talk about how Mission Life is proposed to be rolled out both nationally as well as internationally. Let me just share my screen. Here we go. So hopefully you can see the screen. So as Amitabh said, again, this is a people's movement. And in Hindi, we refer to that as a Jan Andolan. It's essentially how individuals and communities act, sort of walk the talk on promoting a sort of climate-friendly and environmentally conscious life. So let me, where do I go to the next? Okay, here we go. So this presentation is very brief, but 4 parts to it. So what is Mission Life? You saw the opening video in the beginning. That was the video launched by the Prime Minister and the UN Secretary General on the 20th of October in Gujarat. Then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about life in India, life globally, and then life in G20 to be more specific. Now, as all of you know, at COP26, Prime Minister Modi, first referred to lifestyle for the environment. And this was the first time where a head of government had actually spoken about this at an international forum, and given quite a sort of and spoke about the sort of key elements of life. And so that's when we first heard about it in November 2021. Now, how can these individual behaviors, we heard talking about it's time for people to take action, right? We can't wait for the developed world and all the conversations which are going on, while that will go on in parallel on climate change and how do you address it, it's time to take action at scale. So this is how individuals can actually impact climate change in a positive manner. So some very specific examples. Water, on average, we all waste more than 2.5 liters of water daily. Electricity, what all of us can do individually in terms of turning lights, air conditioners, heaters were not in use. You can save up to 282 kilowatts of energy per day. Food, a huge challenge globally. Food wastage, there have been a number of international conferences on this. But what we do know is that on average, we waste about 500 grams of food every single day. Fuel, just 30 minutes of red light idling wastes nearly 1 liter of fuel. So all of us can make contributions to protect the climate and the environment. And therefore, if you look at these actions we have chosen, they deal both with mitigation in terms of reducing emissions, but also in terms of adaptation. If we have water scarcity, how can people adapt to water scarcity? So it cuts across both the mitigation and adaptation discussion. Now, again, just to bring it back to why life, without sort of belaboring the point, obviously climate change is very real, a threat, and it's up to all of us. Everyone has a stake in it, and we all need to act. Therefore, when we talk of sustainable lifestyles, Amitabh spoke about urbanization, the circular economy. Again, what can individuals, families, and communities do during this momentous transitions which are taking place nationally and globally? So in terms of pro-climate lifestyle behavior, this can actually help the planet slash 40 to 70% reduction in GHG emissions by 2050. So this is an IPCC statistic. There's another UNEP statistic which says that individual behaviors can actually reduce emissions by up to 20%. And then, of course, as we discussed, life will also help to strengthen adaptation strategies at an individual and community level. So what is life? We've spoken about life as a movement. So life, like many other programs in India, which Prime Minister Modi has been championing for the last 8 years in mission mode, life is another one of those at-scale mission mode programs. Again, India-led global movement, but nationally to be rolled out, which brings individual and community behavior at the heart and center of climate action. So that's very, very important. Repeating the point about how individuals and communities can practice pro-planet people behavior. And this is being rolled out nationally now. And again, at NITI, we're working very closely with the Ministry of Forest, Environment and Climate Change together to roll this program out across India and again, ambitiously across the world. Now, again, clearly directly linked to SDG 12 and many other SDGs. As you know, SDG 12 talks about responsible production and consumption. The Prime Minister, when he introduced life to the world at COP26 at Glasgow, spoke about mindful consumption and production. And so, again, this is at the heart of the SDG program. And of course, as you know, India has included life as a part of its updated nationally determined contributions. So life, I think we perhaps are the first country which has brought life into its NDCs. Let's talk a little bit about how this is to be rolled out. As you saw, this is just a picture of Prime Minister Modi, the Secretary General of the UN, in launching Mission Life globally on the 20th of October. We were fortunate to have 10 countries, the heads of government and heads of state, endorsing the program at that point through recorded video messages. So again, that's a step towards making life a global movement. Now, what are the key elements of life? And I think Arunabha and Amitabh referred to this, but it's a very ambitious agenda. 1 billion people in India to take individual and collective action over the next 5 to 6 years. So this is being rolled out across the country in our federal systems, the state governments, the local governments, the communities, they're all working on life. So there's accountability at every level. But if you look at how it's supposed to trigger, initially it's about nudging people into life, climate and environmentally friendly behavior. That will in turn change demand. It will trigger demand for more life-friendly supply. So that demand is going to trigger supply in a climate-friendly and environmentally friendly manner. So production will be tailored to demand. And then, of course, it's also about changing policies and regulations. A lot of work has gone on already, but much more work to be done in terms of policies related to industry, to local governments, to urbanization. So all these policies are already being worked on. And important to emphasize, this is not sequential. All three elements of life are going on in parallel, so that we don't have to wait to nudge, to change demand, to sort of demand supply. It's all going to go on in parallel. Now, again, there is a list of 75 individual life actions across 7 categories. There is a mission document which has been jointly prepared by Niti Aayog as well as the Ministry of Forest and Environment. Those 7 categories are listed below. Let me just read them out. Energy saved, water saved, single-use plastic reduced, sustainable food systems adopted, waste reduced, healthy lifestyles adopted, and e-waste reduced. So those are the 7 buckets under which there are 75 individual life actions to celebrate the 75th anniversary of India's freedom. But again, these are indicative actions, and there will be many more actions which can be practiced by individuals and communities. But important to emphasize that all life actions need to be specific and measurable, easy to practice by individuals, communities, with minimal supply side dependencies. And I think an important point to emphasize, this is not about reducing consumption. It's just about becoming more responsible, more sustainable consumption, and a more sustainable lifestyle. And therefore, these actions are easy to practice by everyone, and all of them will lead to sort of pro-planet people impacts. And also they will promote economic activity, as we saw, because demand will trigger supply. And therefore, we will have greater economic activity as a result of life. Now, again, what is the likely impact of mission life in India alone? Now, these are calculations undertaken by Niti, by our research team. But just to give you an idea of the magnitude of the impact of life. Now, the calculation is that just switching off a car or scooter engines at traffic lights or railway crossings can save up to 22.5 billion kilowatt hours of energy. Turning off running taps when not in active use can save up to 9 trillion liters of water. That's adaptation for you. Using a cloth bag instead of plastic while shopping can save 375 tons of solid waste, can prevent it from entering the landfill, and discarding non-functioning gadgets by e-recycling can recycle up to 0.75 million tons of e-waste. And composting waste food at home can save up to 15 billion tons of food and prevent that from also going to landfill. So clearly a massive impact, just if you take these numbers, and there will be much more than this, which we need to calculate. And globally, the impact would be, much more than this. Let's talk a little bit about Mission Life Global. We've had some very good interactions with our development partners. I can see many of them are sitting there with you in the conference room. So development partners, UN agencies, civil society, international partners, international governments. And so now the idea is, how can Mission Life, in addition to being scaled up in India, go global? Because again, this is a kind of India-led, South-led global movement to promote climate-friendly actions. So we've had a number of discussions, a number of stakeholder meetings. We're going to take this forward even more, but critical to get stakeholders across the globe to integrate life in their activities as well. A lot of it is going on already. many countries around the world are already practicing life type actions at an individual, community, institutional level. But we're talking of scale, national scale in India, and then global scale. So how do we do that? So again, there's been an endorsement by these 10 countries I mentioned on October 20th. So of course, there will be key stakeholders we are engaging with, but all the other countries as well. But more importantly, individuals in other countries. I'll come to that in the next slide. There's also a proposal from India. We're working with the Ministry of External Affairs on proposing a UN International Life Day, the way it was done for yoga. And so this proposal is being mooted, and we'll be working in collaboration with and all the other countries to take this forward. The Prime Minister on June 5th of this year also launched a call for proposals. So ideas and research proposals have been invited from global universities and research institutes, precisely on this topic of how individuals can adopt climate-friendly actions in a measurable and attributable manner. So this call for action is still open in case any of you would like to apply, or institutions which would respond to this. The deadline is 31st December, so we still have another couple of weeks when proposals are coming in from all over the world, including from India, and we would encourage you to get your friends, colleagues, and partners to apply. So these will then be vetted. We'll select the top proposals, and then on June 5th, 2023, again, World Environment Day, we'll be having an international conference in India where we will be honoring the winners of these proposals and also giving them an award, which I've got to give Amitabh credit for. He was my predecessor in NITI. So he has instituted an award of $25,000, I believe, for the best papers. So we look forward to receiving proposals from all of you. Now, let me come to the last part of